Hello and welcome to the show. We're here today with a very special Dr. Pepper Hernandez, and we're here to talk about a very special topic, cannabis. You are a cannabis doctor?
Yes. Hi, Todd. Thank you for having me today.
Welcome to the show. So I have some questions for you. The first one is maybe some background information for people who don't know you initially yet. Who are you and what do you do?
Sure. My name is Pepper Hernandez. I am a naturopathic doctor. That's my first doctorate was in naturopathic medicine. So I've spent the last decade, 10, 12 years in a private practice in Northern California. I also have a PhD in transpersonal psychology. I'm a board certified holistic health practitioner, and I created an institute called the Cannabis Holistic Institute, where we educate people to help others, like medical patients, to find the right cultivar, which is also known as strain, for a particular person's ailment or discomfort. So I'm kind of the canna geek, and I write articles that are luckily being published all over, about 5 or 6 different cannabis publications out there that do take my articles, which is just lovely and thrilling that I get to write about the cannabis science, the science behind why humans work so well as far as their endocannabinoid system and the different cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids that cannabis contains. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Of course, there's other things I do, but that's what I'm doing professionally and have been for quite some time.
Wonderful. That's great. Lovely having you on the show. What are cannabinoids and terpenes?
Sure. The base of that, I mean, of course, there's a huge long definition of those, but just in layman's terms, cannabinoids are what we think of as those compounds. And the more familiar ones that you and myself and listeners may know are CBD, THC, CBG, CBN. So the broken down compounds within the cannabis plant itself. And there are upwards of 200 or more at this point. But each one of them are beneficial in a different way. And not all of them are psychoactive. So, for example, THC may be psychoactive, but THCA is not. And THCA can be found in the raw plant form, where THC is only available once the plant has been heated to a certain level. And then there's isolate compounds, which I am not a big fan of isolated compounds by all means, but for research purposes, there are certain ones like THCO, which is like 30 times as strong as THC and can last 300 times longer. So we're looking at all of these compounds within. So that's cannabinoids. Then we have terpenes, which when you're looking at cannabis strains for different ailments or different pains or discomforts, it's really important to know your farmer, or I am always pro patient grow. And when you're choosing a particular cultivar to grow, then we want to make sure that you're looking at your cannabinoid and terpene, which is in a profile. Okay, so cannabinoids are those chemicals that help you, and terpenes are the smell, the flavor, and the aroma that the plant or the cannabis plant may offer. And some of those, just for examples, linalool. Linalool is really great for anxiety. It is, if you think of lavender, lavender also has linalool as a terpene. We have limonene, myrcene. All these terpenes have a different medicinal quality to them, whether it be something that helps you wake up or helps you relax. And this is kind of going off of that question.
This is great. Thank you. Yeah.
But the importance of knowing cannabinoids and terpenes and even your flavonoids is that used to, years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, when we were looking for cannabis, we would recognize the words indica and sativa. Very, very clear, basic. We very quickly outdated that language. There is no such thing any longer because of the hybridization of cannabis. So it's very important to know your cannabinoids and know your terpenes. So when you're looking for something either in the dispo or something to grow on your own, you can line it up with your particular discomfort and find exactly what's right for you. So it's almost some of the most important things. I call it the holy grail of cannabis, being the terpenes, the cannabinoids, and the flavonoids. Now, the flavonoids are flavor, by the way.
We want to talk about what are some good strains to treat OCD or depression or PTSD even?
Sure. That's a great question. And I'll just tell you the honest truth, Todd. Every cultivar or strain, as you call it, is going to be different for every single body type. So that's why a cannabis therapy consultant or a primary care physician who's educated in cannabis research and knowledge is really important to jump on board there. Not all bud tenders are created equal. And so do your research, find someone you really like, and ask the same questions. There are strains that have particular terpene and cannabinoid profile combination that are better for body systems. And I can give you some examples of that, but I needed to really state that open with an open question like that. We have to recognize not all headband is going to be for everyone, right? And Granddaddy Purple isn't for everyone. It depends on body systems. So when we're looking at, you mentioned a few there, but when we're looking at body systems, we want to break it down to see if it's the endocrine system, the nervous system, the glandular system, the skeletal system, the muscular system. What are you trying to accomplish, right? And then what strains can help and what application methods and dosage. So it's really it's a fine-tuned, it's fun and I geek out on it, but to really get the longevity and to be able to say this is exactly what that person needs, it's a little bit deeper than that. Now you can go, there are plenty of websites that you can go on and get suggestions. But as you know, as a cannabis physician and a tuned in consultant, I want to just heed warning to not all of them are going to work for everybody. But I can give you some examples of some nervous system ones that I particularly use in the way that I use them, if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I typically go with whole plant, full spectrum, really, really good quality organic. I mean, I've been in Humboldt County for 10 years, so I've been pretty lucky and very fortunate to find some cultivars that I like very much. And so when we talk about the nervous system, that's going to be anxiety, that's going to be PTSD, OCD issues, anything in the mental exhaustion realm. And so, of course, you want to couple it with magnesium or any kind of supplement. But I have a few that I love very much. It's not for everyone, but these are for me. I like an ACDC, which is a higher myrcene and a higher CBD cultivar. And it's grown really properly. And it's a beautiful, even though ACDC sounds really strong and like crazy, it's actually super mellow and really good for nervous system and seizures. So I like that one quite a bit. Ringo's Gift, of course, Charlotte's Web, of course. There's some really, really good ones for your nervous system. But again, looking for the terpenes are going to be your beneficial piece of finding the right cultivar for anxiety, for example, or nervous system issues.
That's great. I had been smoking one by the name of, pardon my language, cheetah piss. This is amazing. It's perfect and it works. I work on it. I do a lot of research. It's great. I'm focused. I'm happy with it. It's very good. It's sativa hybrid.
So the question, would be here is, that sounds great, but not everyone can get that particular cultivar everywhere. So what are the terpenes and what are the cannabinoids in that profile that then you can suggest to people who are in different countries or around the world that they can grow in their community that's going to have that same effect, right?
Yeah.
Because I've never heard of that particular cultivar, and I'd love to see the profile. I'd love to see what in it is actually getting you creative or inspired, right? Northern Lights across the board is amazing for me, but it needs to be grown in a particular environment to have those terpenes at the level that I particularly need them for shamanic journeys and things like that. So creative wise. So again, it's about the profile of the cannabis plant. As we get into this scientifically and really dial in, that's what we're looking at.
That's great. What is microdosing, and how can a person microdose on marijuana?
I love that question. Thank you very much. It's one that I suggest to almost every single patient that I have, is to, especially when they're starting a new cultivar or a new strain or a new product, or even moving from smoking flower into vaping, concentrates or edibles, or moving into that world. And we're seeing more and more people jump on the cannabis, a new cannabis user. Not everyone is, a connoisseur of cannabis. So micro dosing is doing just a very small amount, and you can microdose a flower. So say you're rolling old school, rolling a joint with really great paper. You're really taking that ceremonial time to become one with your flower, and one puff is microdosing, just one little puff. For example, if you are doing microdosing with edibles, you would want to do the very smallest amount, maybe 2 milligram doses, if that is labeled on the package. If it's not labeled on the package, then, and you're making it or something like that, then again, it's the very smallest amount possible. So go low and slow for microdosing. It's always beneficial. We can always add, always, but we can't subtract. And if you're trying to dial in a usable amount that you can maintain health and a well-balanced mental life, then you want to microdose, and then you can bump that up a little bit at a time. It's much like microdosing psilocybin or any other, thing that you're wanting to do. But yeah, microdosing is the jam, and I highly suggest it to anyone who's trying anything new.
I think we would call you a cannabis educated physician, but not just. You're a cannabis specialist. Is that right?
They say that. They say that. Yes.
They say that, and that's very good. So today, maybe we could talk about what is homeopathic medicine.
Sure. Homeopathic medicine is interesting. Like the last question was microdosing, because that's very much what homeopathy is very small amounts of whatever it be. Say, for example, if I'll take myself as an example, I'm highly allergic to poison ivy. So I do a homeopathy medication, which are just little pellets. They're tiny sugar pills, really. And they have a very, very small, minute amount, right? Microdosing here again, a very minute amount of poison ivy, poison oak, that compound, in that whole branch of a cousin family there. They have that compound. You take those and you're building a tolerance to it. So that's what homeopathy is, in short.
Sure. What are some of the benefits of tinctures?
There are so many benefits of tinctures. And if we're talking about cannabis specifically, there are about 3 types of tinctures. So I'll give you an example of each of them and then tell you why each of them would be beneficial. So there are tinctures that are alcohol extracted and they have alcohol in them. They're going to be pretty strong. They're going to have most of your compounds, your cannabinoids, your terpenes, all that's going to be there. But that is really a powerful punch. It's not something you want to do on a daily. So that is a tincture that I would highly suggest if you're just wanting to knock some things out. Second type of tincture is a glycerin tincture. A glycerin is exactly as it said, it's extracted with glycerin. And, if you're using a cannabis glycerin tincture, it's palatable for immature palates. I'm not going to say a particular age group or anything, but certain people would prefer that. Longevity of a glycerin tincture is not recommended. Personally, I have used it and was really nauseous after a couple weeks of using it on a regular basis because of the high glycemic index of that. So that wasn't something I was going to be able to use for a long period, but it does have its benefits. And then the third is a MCT coconut oil, and that one is extremely palatable for long periods of time. That is what I've settled in on with that tincture. The bonus of any of the tinctures is they can be microdosed. The dosage is very specific on those. If you're getting it from a reputable, consistent company that knows what they're doing in cannabis world, and it can be placed under the tongue, so it can go directly into the bloodstream, which is a very quick and rapid way to get healing for an ailment or discomfort, such as seizures.
Interesting, very interesting. How can cannabis heal?
Oh, Todd, that is such an open question. I'm not saying it's the end all be all, but I am saying with proper nutrition, focused elemental eating, environmental shifts and changes, positive thinking, that cannabis then becomes the missing link. If you have aligned yourself in every way possible and you still feel the need to reach out, and cannabis is calling you. Now, it doesn't call everyone. It's like all other plant medicines, right? Ayahuasca doesn't call everyone. It doesn't call me. There are certain plant medicines that just don't call you. But if you're being called to it, it can heal in whatever way you're needing it to heal. So for my personal example, and I keep coming back to me because of patient liability, right?
Sure.
And HIPAA laws and whatnot.
All of that.
Yeah, all the good stuff. But in my personal reality, in my personal life, I've been able to heal from non-psychoactive cannabis, meaning juicing leaves, for a year. I had a cancer scare. I had a tumor that was the size of a grapefruit on my left ovary, and was told that it would quickly spread to lymphoma and that I didn't have very much time and I needed to do yada, yada, yada.
Right.
And I just thought, no, that's not the way it's going to happen for me. And luckily I was extremely naive, 7 years ago. And so I jumped on the cannabis wagon looking for leaves in my community. Luckily, I did live in Humboldt County and my friends were growers. And so I was able to accumulate quite a few leaves so I could juice them and have them in ice cube trays and save them for the winter, and built myself up to 4 ounces a day. And needless to say, a year later, it did take a while, but a year later, my CA 125 cancer indicators that had at one time been completely off the charts, balanced out, evened out. And I'm here alive today without any of the chemo or the traditional, or I think untraditional directions that some people have to go. I'm grateful for it being there. I just got lucky, right? And I was very forward thinking at the time. So I'm not anti treatment. I think that there is a place for both. And then we could go into many stories.
Sure. We're telling some great stories, real things, testimonial about how marijuana can actually help heal our lives as a wonderful supplement. Even, could we say supplement? Is that okay? Or, I don't want to say the wrong word.
Yeah, you can use it as supplement. I use it as full on medication, but some people, if they're just using it as a supplementation just to maintain their health, such as athletes or yoga gurus. I mean, I've seen it all over the place in different realms.
Yeah, definitely. So that brings us, tell us about entheogenics.
Sure. Entheogenics is just basically plant medicine and how you're in tune with particular plant medicine. So I have a podcast, and it's Quantum Alignment Podcast, and I interview people on the entheogenic world. So that would be like combo, or you've heard me say ayahuasca, or San Pedro, or cannabis, or just all across the board, the medicines, ancient traditional medicines people use in order to achieve a certain result healing wise. And there are some that are, really out there that a very small amount of people have either researched or tried. And it's interesting. I'm not saying it's for everyone, but we could start just with cannabis, right? And
Right.
then that's a soft, gentle one that people can work with. I worked with it for so many reasons, but my big one that I shared with you was cancer. And then on top of that, just on a regular daily maintenance for seizures. But that's the only entheogenic plant I'm using currently.
Understood.
Cannabis, I mean, it can be used for so many things, from as minute as, a very mild case of panic attack or anxiety. It's really known for that currently, especially the non-psychoactive CBD varietals. That is really well known, all the way to something really chronic and extreme, such as cancers, or and everything in between, IBS, hormonal issues, you name it. There's a place for it in the healing world, and more research is being done and developed all of the time. There's some really great studies that have and will continue to be coming out of Israel that are just fabulous and phenomenal. The thing with some of the research that's been done recently in the US is that the particular cultivars that they're doing research on are, if anything, lacking. So they're kind of getting a baseline of what it's healing, when really, if you're like, for example, if any of your listeners know anything about like swagweed or like dirtweed, that's kind of what they're doing the research on, which is
That's
quite
my
funny.
shirt. I got the swag. This is the
Oh,
dirt weed here, which is your girl, of course. And then my girl is the quality primo.
there you go. Well, that's perfect. I didn't even notice. I'm so sorry. But yeah, so what they're doing research on is like the your girl, right? The kind of swaggy weed, like stems and seeds, and they're getting like phenomenal outcomes. But what I'm waiting for is them to do actual research on like the high quality, top shelf, like dense terpene dripping nugs. Like, let's do some research on that, and then let's talk, because that's the type of research I've been doing with my Cannabis Holistic Institute and myself, as well as like thousands upon thousands of patients. And so just across the board, I mean, it's extremely helpful. And there's different application methods for cannabis too. You don't have to just like roll it up and just sit in the backyard puffing. Like, there's other ways to do that. There's topical methods. You can use it in a salve or a topical, or you could do that. Yep, that's totally fine. There's vaping, right? There's edibles. There's all sorts of concentrates now that are just amazing. There's ice water hash and bubble hash and shatter and batter and butter and like all sorts of stuff that are also still smokable. But there's also all the tinctures that we spoke about. So there is like an unlimited amount, and transdermal patches. I mean, there's just so many ways to get cannabis into your body to use it, depending on if it's PMS, if it's cramping, if it's headaches, if it's irritable bowel, if it's vaginal issue. Like, I mean, there's so many. So I could keep talking forever, but it really depends on a person's body system, what their discomfort is, and also, sadly, in the US, the availability.
Yeah. Well, hopefully things are going to be moving in a more progressive direction, and these
Absolutely.
medicines will be available to everyone, and there'll be enough research so that people understand how it's used and which ones for what, and that they'll be led in the right direction. Dr. Pepper Hernandez, how do people find you?
Thank you. That's so sweet. People can find me across all platforms at Dr. Pepper Hernandez. And so the website is drpepperhernandez.com, but on Facebook, Instagram, so on and so on, they can just look at Dr. Pepper Hernandez.
That's great. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.